Please be seated. On the faraway island of Salamassond, Yertle the turtle was king of the pond. So begins the 1958 Dr. Seuss classic, Yertle the Turtle. It was one of my childhood favorites. 55 years and over 1 million copies later, this best-selling children's book still has quite a lot to teach us. Yertle is king of the pond, but one day he decides that his kingdom is just too small. "I'm ruler," said Yertle, "of all that I see, but I don't see enough. That's the trouble with me. With this stone for a throne, I look down on my pond, but I cannot look down on the places beyond. The throne that I sit on is too low down. It ought to be higher," he said with a frown. "If I could sit high, how much greater I'd be. What a king! I'd be ruler of all that I see." And then Yertle had an idea. So Yertle, the Turtle King, lifted his hand, and Yertle, the Turtle King, gave a command. He ordered 9 turtles to swim to his stone, and using these turtles, he built a new throne. He made each turtle stand on another one's back, and he piled them all up in a 9-turtle stack. Then Yertle climbed up. He sat down on the pile. What a wonderful view! He could see most a mile. "I'm Yertle the turtle, oh marvelous me, for I am the ruler of all that I see." Yertle enjoys the view from the top of his 9-turtle stack all morning. He even ignores a protest from a turtle named Mac, who has the unfortunate distinction of being at the very bottom of Yertle's stack. "Silence!" the king of the turtles barked back. "I'm king, and you're only a turtle named Mac." And at that, Yertle decides to go higher still. "My throne shall be higher," his royal voice thundered. "So pile up more turtles. I want about 200. And up goes Yertle's stack of turtles, each one stepping on the head of poor Mac as they climb. Yertle is so high he can't see the turtles way down at the bottom. Then Yertle the turtle was perched up so high he could see 40 miles from his throne in the sky. "Hooray!" shouted Yertle. "I'm king of the trees. I'm king of the birds, and I'm king of the bees. I'm king of the butterflies, king of the air. Ah me, what a throne! What a wonderful chair! I'm Yertle the turtle. Oh, marvelous me, for I am the ruler of all that I see." Poor Mac, though, is having a really tough time. His knees hurt, his back aches, and he's getting really hungry. But Yertle shows no mercy. He has a throne to build. "I rule from the clouds, over land, over sea," he shouts. "There's nothing, no, nothing that's higher than me." Except perhaps there is. But while he was shouting, he saw with surprise that the moon of the evening was starting to rise up over his head in the darkening skies. "What's that?" snorted Yertle. "Say, what is that thing that dares to be higher than Yertle the king? I shall not allow it. I'll go higher still. I'll build my throne higher. I can and I will. I'll call some more turtles. I'll stack them to heaven. I'll need about 5,607. Well, if we were listening to this morning's Old Testament reading from Sirach, we might have an idea what happens next in the story. Sirach, or the Wisdom of Ben Sira, as it's sometimes known, was written in the 2nd century BC in Jerusalem. It's part of the wisdom literature, and it's modeled in large part on the book of Proverbs. Sirach is essentially a book of moral and ethical instruction intended to teach the fear of God as the source of true wisdom. It's also intended to teach the leading of a virtuous life based on the teachings of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the law. And it teaches on how to conduct oneself in the many and complex relationships of life. The verses that we heard this morning are from a section in which Ben Sira addresses arrogance and pride. He writes in that section things like, "Human success is in the hand of the Lord, and it is He who confers honor. Arrogance is hateful to the Lord and to mortals, and injustice is outrageous to both. How can dust and ashes be proud? None is greater than the one who fears the Lord." And in this morning's reading, Ben Sira teaches what happens when we forget these lessons. The Lord overthrows the thrones of rulers and enthrones the lowly in their place. The Lord plucks up the roots of nations and plants the humble in their place. It sounds a lot like Mary's song from the Gospel of Luke. God has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. It also sounds a lot like what Jesus teaches throughout the Gospel of Luke and even in our story this morning from that Gospel. Jesus is having dinner at the home of a leader of the Pharisees. And when he notices how the guests are choosing the places of honor at the table, he tells them a parable. But in order to appreciate Jesus' parable, we have to know a little something about how Jewish society operated at that time. Like many Mediterranean cultures, Jewish social interaction was governed by an unspoken set of rules involving honor and shame. We might think of honor as the measure of a person's value or worth or importance within the social group. And in this system, a person's social status and position were tied directly to the amount of honor they had. But importantly, this is a zero-sum game. There's only so much honor to go around. So if one person gains honor or status or position, someone else must lose it. To put it another way, in order for one person to move up in society, another must move down. Things work in kind of the same way with Yertle's kingdom. As he builds his throne, he can only gain power or position by standing on the back of another turtle, with the lowest status guy, poor Mac, down at the bottom. All social interaction in this culture was about the constant exchange of honor and shame, which was the loss of honor. But we can also think in terms of power, position, and status. They're the same idea. So a person was born with a particular amount of honor based on the status and the position of his family of origin. But one could also gain honor, or I guess lose it, by playing the honor-shame game, if you will, kind of a jockeying for position between participants that could give rise to some very, very elaborate and complex patterns of behavior. So let's say, for example, that I want to climb the social ladder, and you are a person of higher status than I. I know that there is an unwritten rule that a dinner invitation must be repaid. So if you accept an invitation from me, you must return that invitation. I also know that your dinner party will be attended by all the right people, the people who are at least your social equals. So I initiate this game by inviting you to dinner. Not because I particularly enjoy your company, but because I do like your guest list. And the return invitation with people of high prestige will increase my honor. Now, the game could also be played at the dinner table itself, which is essentially a physical display, or a map even, of where people fell on this honor-shame spectrum. It still is, actually, for us in many ways. And much like Yertle's stack of turtles. So the closer to the middle one sat, the closer they were to the top of the stack. And in our story, Jesus notices the guests jockeying for the positions of honor at the table. Each is trying to improve or display his position of importance by where at the table he sits and who he sits with. And not surprisingly, Jesus has a few things to say about what he sees going on here and how things work a little differently in the kingdom of God. When you give a luncheon or a dinner, he says, don't invite all the right people who can repay the invitation. Instead, invite the poor, the misfits, the people from the other side of the tracks, the people below you on the social ladder. And when you are invited, don't presume to sit at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has also been invited. And then in front of everyone, your host will have to make you give up your seat in favor of that person and send you down to the end of the table. How embarrassing is that? Instead, sit down at the lowest place so that your host may move you up higher, and then you'll be honored in the presence of those who sit with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Or as Eugene Peterson puts it in his Bible translation, The Message, if you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But as Yertle, the Turtle King, lifted his hand and started to order to give the command, that plain little turtle below in the stack, that plain little turtle, his name was just Mac, that plain little Mac did a plain little thing. He burped. And his burp shook the throne of the king. And Yertle the turtle, the king of the trees, the king of the air and the birds and the bees, the king of a house and a cow and a mule, well, that was the end of the Turtle King's rule. For Yertle, the king of all Salamasan, fell off his high throne and fell plunk in the pond. Our friend Yertle, and the Pharisees too, would have done well to listen to Ben Sira and to Jesus. Had he listened, he would have known the fleeting nature of human and turtle power. After all, how can dust and ashes be proud? He would have known that this over-under system of relationships creates attitudes and barriers that undermine and destroy community. He would have known the irrelevance in God's kingdom of cultural contests of power and esteem. He would have known that we shouldn't step on people in order to get ahead, nor should we look down on them when we do. After all, God, who is always higher than we, does not look down on us, but became one of us. He would have known that his worth was not measured by recognition by his peers, nor the height of his throne, but by the certainty of God's love for him. He would have known that no matter what his position in life, he is of infinite value to God. And for that matter, so is Mac. He would have known that there is power in humility and freedom in the security of God's grace. But sadly, he didn't. So today, the great Yertle, that marvelous he, is king of the mud. That's all he can see. And the turtles, of course, all the turtles are free, as turtles and maybe all creatures should be.